Greetings. Today, entering the lab is AJ Perez of Front Office Sports. He's entering to give us the current state to the sale of the Washington Commanders and talk about his report that he dropped this morning. Jeff Bezos remains in running for the Washington Commanders. So please listen up. Please subscribe to Red Zone and Lab podcast on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast.
This is Hog Farmer Chris from the Hog Farmers Charitable Foundation. And before you start listening to Red Zone in the Lab, check out our Amazon Smile, a simple way to support the Hog Farmers Charitable Foundation every time you shop, and it's no cost to you.
We're back! Welcome back to Red Zone in the Lab with Deuce.
Welcome to a brand new season of the Red Zone in the Lab podcast, where nothing is off the table. We will be discussing entrepreneurship, education, Black history, health, movies, family, and of course, sports. So do yourself a favor, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow on all social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, you can always visit us at redzoneinTheLab.com.
Welcome back. This is Red Zone in the Lab podcast. I am Deuce, and entering the lab today on a bonus all-season edition is AJ Perez of Front Office Sports. How you doing, AJ?
Doing well. Yeah, you got ahead of everybody else asking me to come on before my story came out. So
yeah, glad I could be able to get you on. AJ, let's get right into it. It's been a long 7 days for Commanders, for the Commander fans. With Eric Bieniemy being hired and going back and forth about battling with other fan bases and different media people about his accomplishments and the reason why he should be a head coach, the Rooney Rule and all those different types of things, right? So, yeah. And that's unfortunate, but he took a job here, and we can get into that another time. But we're here to kind of talk about Dan Snyder. But one of the things I wanted to mention about Eric Bieniemy in his press conference, did you think that was weird that he didn't mention Dan Snyder when he was doing his thank yous?
No, because I think there was no indications that, we know that I reported the day, and it was like I covered the news conference, and going there that day, things seemed different. It was like I left, I was still in Ashburn, but I left the team headquarters feeling that a sale was pretty much going to happen. It was moving that way. We didn't know who was going to get it. We still really don't. But the way that Jason Wright was talking and and then one of my sources told me that, that Snyder wasn't involved in any group interviews. I don't know. I think he may have talked. I'm sure he talked to Eric Bieniemy one-on-one, either by Zoom or phone. That it's everything. And when you couple that with him reportedly not attending the last two games last season and spending all his time in London, there was a lot of feeling that the sale was going to go through, and Eric Bieniemy for sure wouldn't come here if Snyder was going to stay, which is not the case. So, I think there's, this is an opportunity. This is a great opportunity for him. He's going to do. This is a great fit. I mean, Eric Bieniemy interviewed other places, including for head coaching jobs over the years, but this fit, especially with Rivera being, on the defensive side of things, and Bieniemy going to be able to have full control of the offense for the first time in his career, so they can take away that he doesn't call the plays. Exactly. How many coaches have not called plays on both sides of the ball? How many white coaches have gotten jobs on both sides of the ball who've never called plays? Special teams coaches have gotten
that's true,
gotten hired. All right, so it's as head coaches, so that so he can whether this is a 1 or 2 year deal, and maybe he'll 1 or 2 year, it's definitely at least a 2 year deal, but this is good. Maybe this will put him in line a little higher up, which should have been anyway for a head coaching job. He was very close with Indy. I think that and then when that didn't happen, the Commanders were the next best landing spot for him. So you go in there and you got all the positive vibes, which I haven't seen around Ashburn since around the team headquarters ever. I probably first time there was probably been at least a dozen years ago when I first started visiting and covering stuff there. It just felt different, Eric, Eric talked to everybody wanted to talk to him. So did Jason Wright, Martin Mayhew, Coach Rivera, they were all just so available to us, and just like the vibe there. And then Friday we get that story from the New York Post, and then followed up with the Athletic, where we're shutting Bezos out, and that caused a lot of heartache. But yeah, so we can talk a little bit about that, I guess.
Yes, and that interview was very powerful. And the energy behind it, you're correct, is something I never felt. I mean, you guys have had the access to those type of interviews, but social media now, the fans is getting more involved and being able to have access to those type of meetings. But not progress. Comfort is the enemy of progress. Like it's those type of things that you hear, you like, wow, I can actually apply that to my life. But Jason Wright made a comment. He said something without saying anything, right? And he said the process is moving forward. What does that mean?
It means we're getting close. I mean, we're getting close to either two things, either Snyder selling or him keeping it. So I think I still think it's more likely than not that team's going to be sold. Bezos, Harris appear to be the two most likely candidates at this point. Things can change. Things change daily. That's why I don't like to discount other reports from other organizations, because because things change. One day someone says this, and the next day it totally changes. That's part of this covering. I've covered a few sales. I know how it works. You have to vet and filter out the sources. Like, why is the source giving me this? I always strive to find sources that have nothing in all of my stories so far on this. No sources had an axe to grind. No source, they all have viewpoints, and they all have their likes and dislikes. Because they're human. But it's part of my job is to put out the most accurate information and making sure I'm not getting played, so my readers get the best the best information they can. I'm not saying that didn't happen with the other reports, but especially the Washington Post obviously broke two big stories the last several days. First with Allen and Company representing Bezos, and then the Tillman Fertitta scoop on Saturday. That showed where this process is going. Obviously, Tillman, I think it's unlikely at this point, unless something changes, to be considered a leading candidate. But we're at and this is going to be lots of meetings. There's meetings going on this entire week. Either Zoom or in Indy for the combine. There's gonna be a lot of talking among team executives, possibly even team owners. Urging either Bezos or Snyder or both to come to kind of a deal. I'm still working on that part of it. Hopefully I have some more to report in the next couple of days, but there's a lot of things happening behind closed doors. I mean, this is the noisy time. When he announced in November, like I told everybody when I was doing these interviews, just when we started this process, that it's going to be quiet for probably till Christmas. And now after Christmas, it was still kind of quiet. And it was so quiet over the last several weeks that a lot of the owners are kind of freaked out. The owners are like, what's going on? We put this, we haven't made any movement towards, getting banning Dan Snyder, or anything. It was, what's going on? They're all, and a lot of them don't have much information to go off of outside of our reporting. They could find out more than I can by calling the league office. They're not going to tell me anything, but so they'll, if they wanted to know, they'd know a little bit of heads of what's going on. But there's just a lot of people are concerned, and a lot of owners are, that I'm not going to say a majority, but at least some are concerned that he's going to keep the team, and that's going to, with two other you've got other investigations out there, three, I guess, right now. You got the Mary Jo White one, the second outside investigation by the league. You got the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Virginia, and then you have the Virginia Attorney General. Those three are ongoing. The most troublesome would probably for sure be Mary Jo White's report. That's looking into the financial allegations and also the one instance of harassment that was leveled at Snyder in January of 2022. And then the Virginia one will probably end up like DC suing Snyder in the league and the team, or Maryland, who has settled with the team over the allegations of keeping ticket holder money.
When it comes to Bezos and the Allen Company that you mentioned, that it kind of broke, I think it was the same day as the press conference, a little later that evening. It was right after. I just filed my story. I went to get a smoothie, and I was driving back,
because I work out in my gym here a lot. The dogs don't bark. I don't have any of my dogs here. So I was like, oh man, that's awesome. So I obviously cited Nikki, Mark, and Liz on that story. That was great. That was like, so we're riding high that day, right? And then
so this is
we're like, this is gonna happen. And then we're like, now we get like, we're back. We're kind of like, what's going on now? Yeah. So there's always peaks and valleys, and it's all, you know, there were those with the Broncos, a little less so since, you know, Walton, the Bolin family, unfortunately, that they, you know, had their issues after Bolin died. You know, they had their issues with a little court fight about the team. There was drama for that, you know, but once the sale kind of got going, it flowed. You know, then so we're at a point here. It took I think it was 64 days between the time the Walton was announced as leading as the winner of the bid. It took 64 days before the NFL owners voted for approval. So that's why we're still, even if it comes out tomorrow, we're still going to wait. You know, it could be quicker, especially since Bezos is uber rich, third richest person in the entire world. And then if it's Harris, you know, and there could be others. Those are the two I've been kind of focused on. Harris has already been through the process with the Broncos, so that could take less time. Maybe we're going to cut it down to 30 or 40 days. But with NFL owners meetings being a month out, at this point, unless something changes the next few days, I don't think we'll have a vote, because it's going to take the finance committee to at least some time to make the recommendation.
With the Allen and company, they wasn't just hired. Is that correct? Like they've been actually working with him.
I don't know when. New York Post, the New York Post reported they've you know, he's been involved for a while. I don't know. I have not heard that. I don't know when Allen Company. I know a couple of people there, but once they get involved in they don't talk to me, even off the record. So you know, I still run my stories past them. I still give them a heads up, but and it's just like I do with the team. Whenever I report on the team, I know they're not going to comment, but I still give the you know, the team PR a heads up when I'm reporting. So, you know, just at least an hour or so before I report. I gave him like 12 hours yesterday, but just because I got the story around 7 or 8 o'clock last night and wrote it up and went to bed. But so
you put the teaser out. I'm going to have something in the morning.
Well, I didn't know it was going to be that. I was just going to have this is what's happening, and then I was like, and I've been kind of fell, and my sources kind of came through on this one. So yeah, there's a lot of things. I mean, there's, you know, I think whatever happens, and no one's gonna like this. The team's in a better place with Eric Bieniemy, even if Snyder stays. No one wants to hear that.
Oh yeah.
And I think, if Snyder keeps the team, it's not going to be long term. I still think he'll sell within a couple of years, or he'll be forced to. He'll be forced to sell. The league's going to take away that ability for him to make a choice. That's why I close my story with, if it's not now, it's going to be sometime soon. It's like, I don't see these investigations. You know, the FBI one, you know, the U.S. Attorney's Office one, it's going to go on for a while, most likely, because these things can take a year or two. And this thing only started last fall, this investigation. And we don't know what they're looking at besides just that one, you know, the one subpoena that's been out. There could be others that could be looking beyond what the financial stuff that I reported on, I broke about a year ago, right. And that was in the congressional a letter to the Federal Trade Commission and others. So, you know, there could be other things they're looking at. I think there's a lot of us working, at least a couple outlets working on what that is. You know, that could be damaging too. There's just really the heat's going to remain on Snyder. It's going to become even more so if he keeps the team.
So last week we got a lot of reports because, of course, the Commanders was gearing up for seat relocation for their season ticket holders. So a lot of fans and other people been in contact with people at the facilities, and it was rumors going around that everyone was sent home last Friday, and for mystery bidder to come in and tour the place. And then all of a sudden we was kind of, who is this? It's Bezos. It's Bezos. It's Bezos. And then a report comes out with the Houston owner. So that kind of changed. Well, maybe it was him. Is there anything that you have to let us to kind of inform us about the mystery bidder at the facility?
No, Friday? The Post reported Saturday that Fertitta likely visited. I know that Josh Harris did visit, and that happened right before the Super Bowl. There could be others. I'm sure there's probably a couple of others, and there's could be other bidders coming out. You know, there's always a chance whether to be somebody, the capital people, who wanted to buy the 40% who were denied. They have a net worth that's, almost about equal to what Fertitta and Josh Harris have, and those net worths, those are just guesses. And also, it's the hard part is getting that 30%. You're going to, even if the team sells for $6 billion, that's $1.8 billion in cash that you have to have as part of the purchase. You can't finance all of it, you can't bring in a bunch of co-owners. You need one person with 30% to have. It's an NFL. The NFL has that rule. No other league has that threshold. And other leagues do private equity. So
okay, so one person has to have the 30%, it can't be included if they bring in people with. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they can. So the other 70% could be partners or co-owners, or you could finance it. I think the league would like other co-owners. So when you start financing stuff, especially when you need to build a $3 billion to $4 billion new stadium, that's going to be that's going to be tough. So that's what this is not a 6. If it sells for 6.3, 6.5, you got to add $3 to $4 billion on top of it. That gets it closer to $10 billion because you need a new stadium. Now, could a new owner have better luck with getting public money than Snyder has? For sure, but it's not going to be a ton more, especially if you want RFK. That can make it even costlier to get that in play. It's going to take a lot of work. So that, then you're going to be stuck at FedEx. I say stuck at FedEx, but they're going to be at FedEx maybe a little longer. But the easiest route right now to a new stadium is building something next to FedEx. That's the way it is right now. And I don't know anybody, that's not going to satisfy everybody, but maybe the Maryland fans, because they don't want to go down, drive all the way down to Prince William County in Virginia, which is just a mess. And I'm only about 5 miles away right now. It's from the Sterling site, so which would be a mess, but it would be at least it wouldn't have to deal with the Beltway.
Yeah.
Sorry, Beltway and the 95. My bad.
Yeah. Can Dan block Bezos from bidding?
Yeah, he could. He could do it. He could block it. He could take a lower bid. He can keep the team. He could sell a team for $5. It's really up to Snyder. The repercussions if he sells just for lower, he's not going to be because these teams are valued on what the last club sold for. So the Broncos sold for $4.65 billion last year. They have an older stadium, about the same age as FedEx but it's a little better shape than FedEx. It's in a better place.
3 years younger, I think.
Yeah. So that, and they had a big old fire last offseason.
Yeah,
they had to, they had to fix that, and they got it fixed up right before the season opener. So there's always going to be things that that come up. But yeah, it'll be the next, I say, couple weeks, we're going to know a lot more.
So the NFL will know if Bezos bidded something higher than what Dan accepted. Would the owners not approve if Dan purposely just don't want to sell to a higher bidder?
Yeah, no, I think they're not going to be happy, but ultimately they're probably going to want Dan out. The ones that do want Dan out, we just don't know how many. I don't think, even if it doesn't go through, even get 24 votes for removal, other things will have to happen. Even now, I don't know. It would be a very close vote if Dan says I'm not selling, and then we're going to have to wait for the Mary Jo White report to come out, and then whatever happens with the other investigations. That could change the math for sure. But it's getting to that 24 number because they do not want us, make an example out of anybody, even Dan Snyder, because they don't want their franchise, if they do something wrong years down the road, or their kids or their kids' because these franchises are really set up to be handed down to family, and that the succession is something Goodell is really focused on, getting the succession plan in place for these teams. That's one of his focuses as commissioner in the background, just trying to avoid what happened with the Broncos and what nearly happened with the Saints after Benson died. So there's, he's really focused. It's not good for the league to have, it's not good for the league to have fights among ownership, and which we've had here with the Commanders, with the other co-owners who were actually bought out by Snyder eventually. But they also don't want teams changing hands all the time. And and there's, while there's, I've heard other teams come up, like it could be on the market that beyond which I think a lot of people believe the Seahawks are next, which Bezos could wait for that one. If really things get bad, and Snyder's really said, oh, you can buy him if you spend $7.5 billion. It's not. You're also dealing with egos of very rich men in this. And I think Snyder, who had the most expensive house in the area, he bought a couple of years ago, $49 million, and down in Alexandria. It's an ego thing. This team's going to sell for the most of any franchise in the world. Maybe Newcastle, which is on the market in the Premier League, could sell for more. That could actually complicate things. Actually, if it sells for more before Snyder decides, oh man, that would be big. So it's a lot of egos you're dealing with, including Bezos. The whole story about him having to sell the Washington Post. I don't see how a mogul like Jeff Bezos is going to have to kowtow to Dan Snyder. But it's possible, but it's like, I don't know, if there's an easier path to an NFL team with Seattle or elsewhere down the road for a lot less with not in Seattle, they don't need a new stadium in Seattle. So you don't have to buy a new stadium. So build a new stadium. So that's also have to factor in.
Can Dan facilitate, and this might be a stupid question. This is a fan question, AJ. Can Dan facilitate a bid with like two potential bidders that's not getting up to his number for them to work together to be able to get to the number he wants?
Yeah, that's part of it. I think there's always, and that's Bank of America's job mainly. I mean, they can bundle some people together. And a lot of these people know each other, especially Harris owning the Sixers and the Devils, and he has interest in other sports over the teams over the years as well. So does his partner Blitzer. And a lot of and even Fertitta, I'm sure he has his friends at NBA and other sports. They can come together for get their money together, because NFL, you're assured, your salary cap, is basically covered by the TV deals. So you're going to be making, you got to pay obviously there's other expenses beyond player payroll. You got to pay the coaches and the staff. But, that's easily offset by other deals, local TV deals, all the advertising, ticket revenue, and everything else. So, it's NFL teams make money and they go up at a higher rate. They appreciate more than any other sport, especially if you have your own stadium, which the team has now, or a new stadium, but more luxury boxes, more amenities, and they can charge more. There's huge upside to being an NFL owner, but the price you have to pay to get into and to be an NFL owner is pretty overwhelming, and that's why this process is taking a while.
Just a couple fire questions for you before we go, AJ. With all of the reports that you have and all of your reporting and your sources, if I was to ask you a yes or no, do you believe Dan is going to sell? What would you say?
I would say it's going to be, more likely than not at this point. I think there's still, there a lot of there's a lot of gamesmanship right now, a lot of things going around, but I think getting to get that higher number, I think that's it. I think you should look at it that way more than Dan said, are not selling. But there is always that option that he'll keep the team, and that's something that it's probably more likely than I thought if he asked me this back in November.
How many bids do we have? How many bidders? How many bids? And what's the last highest number that you're aware of?
We had a 6.3 bid that came in during the early round of bidding. Now I don't know what happened with that. It could still be valid. I have not been able to confirm that since. But we know Harris has bid. We don't know the number. We know we saw Fertitta come in at 5 point, whatever the Washington Post had in my story. I'm blanking, 5.7 or 8. So those are the two bids that we know. And as far as Bezos hasn't bid. There could be others out there. There could have been earlier bids that didn't even reach that high. But I think around 6 right now would be a good estimate of where the current bids are.
To the fans that are stressing out about this process, about the back and forth, the different reports and all of those things, and just afraid he's not going to sell. Some people are really stressing out. Before you go, what are some words of encouragement that you would give those people?
All right. Even if Dan doesn't sell, at least you have a new offensive coordinator. You have, who believes in your quarterback and how you have, a lot of they're going to be not going to be probably making a ton of moves, in the offseason. You never know. I mean, hiring the enemy was, firing Turner and getting the enemy was huge. There are reasons for hope, even if Stan stays. And if you really want him out, that could still be in the cards via the NFL owners, or him just decided to sell at a later time.
Thank you so much again, AJ Perez, for entering the lab on today. We appreciate your time. We know it's very valuable for you to use it with us. We greatly appreciate it. Please follow AJ Perez on Twitter at Front Office Sports. And what's your handle, AJ?
BYAJ Perez on Twitter and Instagram.
Thank you so much. Again, thank you all out there for listening. Thank you for watching. This is Red Zone in the Lab podcast. I am Deuce. One beat, one sound, one heart, one love.
Thank you for listening to Red Zone in the Lab podcast. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Red Zone in the Lab. And you can download our podcast at Spotify, iTunes, and Podbean. And please visit our website at redzoneinTheLab.com. Thank you.